There's Lori.
Go ahead.
This will be fun.
You got lyrics. Rotating around.
There we
It was
go.
in the app. I was looking for something in my iPad. It's just
Oh, yeah.
setting in the app, just check from audio.
Yeah. That works. And Brad, if you want to be seen or heard, you'll have to be at the podium.
Okay.
All right.
Do I have a choice?
Nope. Nope. I think, before we get started, for those of you online, I assume, I'm hoping you can hear me. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, good. We're trying something a little different for those council members that are in the room. They've joined the go-to meeting so you can see them, but because they're in the room, their audio is completely muted. So if you're watching from remotely, you'll see the speaker is the just the council room that shows the entire room that you can see my voice coming through now. But you also have a picture of me online too. So we'll see how that works. It should make it a little bit easier to tell who's talking and at least have a little closer view of the speaker.
Okay. With that, I have 7 o'clock. So we will call the May 21st City Council meeting to order. We'll start with roll call, please.
Lane,
Here.
Daniels,
Here.
Hanemichael,
Here.
Murdoch,
Here.
Ritter.
Here.
Thank you, council. Everyone's present, Mayor.
Okay. I would invite you all to rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Our first item tonight is to have a public hearing to consider projects for the 2021 Cdbg application. Brad?
All right, thank you. Thank you, council. This is just a follow-up to our discussion that we had last week, where we identified several projects, that the council input on projects that could be submitted for the water act 2021. And of course, with this process, we're going to a public hearing where we submit our application. So, this is the time.
Okay. Well,
Also, I want to say the deadline has been extended to June 1st. So
okay.
Public hearing and engage the public in this process.
All right. So we will open the public hearing, and I'll do that now. Public hearing's open. So if anyone, we have no one in the audience. So anyone listening online that would like to make a comment regarding the application for our CDBG project, if you would make yourself known, and then we will let you make your statement. All right. I'm not seeing any, so I'm going to close the public hearing.
we will need some sort of direction.
Yeah, if we could get a motion, at the last meeting, we talked about the Wea Street water line and sidewalk project as our application. If the council still feels like that's the right one, if you could just make a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to make the Wea Street Waterline Sidewalk our project for this year on the CDBG application. Any further discussion of the motion? Roll call, please.
Lane,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Hanamichael.
Yes.
Thank you, council members. Motion carried, Mayor.
Okay, our next item is our consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have approval of our minutes from our council meeting of May 7th, approval of pay ordinance number 878, and approval of collateral assignment for K10 Place 2 LLC project. Any discussion of any items on the consent agenda or any items we'd like to pull to discuss further? Or a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion. We approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Hanamichael.
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Lane.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Motion carried.
Okay, our next item is call to public. Did we receive any outside anybody notify us by email or phone call
No.
No.
regarding anything?
Nope.
Okay. I think we'll probably talk about it later when we go forward what we're going to do. Old business item 3, we have none, so we'll go to 4A, new business. Consider ordinance approving special use permit for Mill Creek Gun Club.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you have a special use permit for a site plan change at the Mill Creek Gun Club, what the Gun Club would like to do is add several additional shooting ranges. Doing so, they need to, of course, extend or change their special use permit. The previous special use permit had some street changes and allowed for different configuration for some of the shooting ranges that were originally intended of the gun range based upon their heavy use by law enforcement. They've added several ranges in the proposed site plan that dedicate to specific agencies that would like to utilize the gun club on a little bit more frequent basis. Just go through some of the particulars. The special use permit was submitted on the 30th of March. We held a public hearing with the planning commission. Didn't receive any comments at the public hearing itself. However, during the discussion with the planning commission, I did receive one email from a property owner nearby who did get a notice about the gun club, in favor of the change. One thing that was brought up during the planning commission meeting was some of the items mostly to do with the start time with the gun club. Members have it posted 7 a.m. start time over the ordinance actually, but it says 5 a.m. they can start. So there was some concern about the early start time. Also, the discussion about camping on the site. And apparently, sometimes the police council go out there and they'll camp overnight and do some activities at the gun club. So there was some concern and discussion about some of the call movement particulars that itself. Now, the gun club themselves just want to change the site plan. They don't want to change any of the other terms or conditions. The planning commission did want council to be aware that you do have the opportunity to amend, change, look at any of the items as part of the special use. Comment on that. We've actually how the special use permit, even though it's, the gun club is only requesting the site plan change.
Right, under our regs, the fact that they're expanding operations triggers the entire review process, so. And I had thought we were attaching a copy of the existing ordinance to the staff report. And if you wanna take a break, I can go run a copy. But that was a specific request of the planning commission that the city council review the existing terms. And yes, you would be well within your authority to change those. It would have to be approved by a 2/3 majority, so 4 out of 6 would be vote in favor of it, of the ordinance. And actually, if you wanted to change any of those terms, we would need to modify the ordinance slightly to accommodate that.
So is the ordinance listed pretty much the same as it's been with the expansion included?
Yeah, well, the ordinance that I prepared is simply authorizing the expanded operations and then indicates that the existing ordinance is not changing. It's staying,
Okay.
those requirements are still in place. So I guess do any of you want to look at the existing ordinance that includes all of the terms, or are you comfortable not having that opportunity? Because I think if that's something you'd like to address, then you probably need the ordinance.
So I guess there was, I mean, to my knowledge, there was no issue with the operation in the previous ordinance, right? I mean, haven't received any complaints.
Yeah, I think in reading the minutes, I think Roger Templin, just one of the commissioners, brought up that he was surprised to see that people could start shooting at 5 a.m. And that's kind of where the discussion went from there.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I'm not aware of any other issues with their operation.
Yeah, I think I did listen to the discussion at the planning commission meeting, and I noted, I guess what I noted maybe was more that Roger was wondering if the two shouldn't be worked to align, because, this special use permit shouldn't be consistent with the ordinance or vice versa, right? I mean, that's kind of the gist I got. And the only real issue I got was the start time out of that discussion. I mean, the camping was just kind of an offhand question at the meeting that was addressed, and so it's.
Yeah, I think, Mary, you're correct. The ordinance, the current ordinance, had a 5 a.m. start time, and the members actually on their website, Roger noted, say that they could start at 7 a.m. And so felt that there should be some sort of consistency between what our ordinance is and what the membership is required.
Yeah.
Also, we talked a little bit about our noise ordinance, and that actually kicks in at 7 a.m.
So I guess if they can shoot a gun without violating our noise ordinance before 7 a.m., then they can operate under the current ordinance, right?
Correct.
Was it not left that way when we discussed this once before, just for the convenience of some of the law enforcement that might want to use it beforehand, but that most of the members of the club don't go until 7, but the law enforcement sometimes, because of their schedules, like to go at a different time? Does that sound maybe familiar?
That's what I was going to ask on the discrepancy is more for the law enforcement side
That's
of it.
vaguely familiar. But
I think that was kind of
that was
something.
a few years ago.
Well, yeah.
We talked about it.
Right.
The other thing to date from the neighbors, I have a number of neighbors that are around that area. They're friends. And also I've actually asked for Steve and Walter and those guys about if there's been any complaints to date. And to date, I have not been told of any complaints, noise or otherwise, and they've been good neighbors and good citizens within the community, to my knowledge.
Yeah, I would concur. I've obviously taken this gun club in 3.5 years, I think.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I'm a member there, but I haven't been shooting much lately. But everything I know of the expansion and the road in front of it is almost entirely for law enforcement, other than the shotgun side. So not only improving it for them, it's approving it for the law enforcement agencies that utilize that facility, which there's none other in the county that can support law enforcement like that one.
Kevin, any comments? Danny, do you have any comments? Questions?
No, Mayor, I do not. Thank you.
Okay. Kevin Ritter?
No, sir, I'm in favor.
Okay. I guess we have consensus that we're okay with leaving the ordinance as is and moving ahead with this. My judgment. So
What's our
Ordinance number?
2491.
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 2491, authorizing changes to the existing special use permit for Mill Creek Rifle Club located at 7215 Gardner Road within the city of DeSoto, Johnson County.
I'll second that.
all right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? Roll call, please.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Lane.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Motion carried, Mayor.
Next item, B, consider ordinance approving text amendment relating to auto sales in the downtown commercial zoning district.
All right, thank you, Mayor. We've been briefed on this a little bit on some previous discussion about Dean Weller's businesses. You know, we talked about a temporary use permit, but he's going to sell his collection of property of his automobiles. So we would like to see that sort of use continue at that location. However, our zoning ordinance is pretty clear that automobile sales and parts distribution are completely prohibited at this location. And that's due to because we didn't want signage, lighting, some of the activities that typically go, traffic volumes that go on with auto sales. However, the request has been made to allow for auto sales as long as the planning commission came up with a series of conditions that the planning commission felt was appropriate to allow for continued use of this structure. The purchaser would like to have an automobile license dealership. And Dean operates more of a hobby, so he doesn't need to have that type of requirement or license from the state. But as far as the permit itself, the government body needs to sign off since it will introduce the appropriate zoning district. This time we couldn't concur with anything like that as far as conforming to auto sales in this district. So we went through the process, had several meetings with the planning commission, came up with a series of conditions that felt were appropriate, that would allow for auto sales in the C1 district, and it would also be under a special use permit. So just approving this ordinance itself doesn't mean that it's allowed. It's going to come back through the process and we have to meet the conditions that are in your staff. Through the reasoning for some of them. First of all, we agree that no storage outdoors, no vehicles can be parked outside, behind the building, in front of the building. All vehicles for sale must be stored inside. Everybody else felt it was important that there be a posted hours, just don't want it to be a hobby business. And we didn't want to require that it be 8 to 5, 5 days a week. We just want to give the owners some opportunity to say that there will be times that the public can just show one and look around like you would at any shop. Usually in the downtown district. Signage must comply with the current sign regulations. Any kind of exhaust fumes, noise from working on equipment must be building codes and not offensive to nearby businesses. One thing also we talked about quite a bit was wanting to have a proposed owner or buyer was really just talking about antique auto sales. We thought that was a little bit too restrictive, and there is a little bit of an opportunity to sell later model vehicles. However, the emphasis, 80% of sales still must be antique auto sales, and that's defined by the state of Kansas. It must be a vehicle that's 35 years or older. So they still can sell a few late model 2000, 2010s, whatever vehicles. However, locally auto sales must be antique category. Talked about also the submittals for the special use permit. We do want to have some sort of architectural plan. We do define it as a site plan, but this is a little different because it would be an indoor facility. But we do want to have some sort of assurance that it's just not going to be a barren sort of structure. Offices and displays, and things that make it more of a retail business that is attractive and a draw to the downtown area. And then finally, because some of those structures, especially on the south side of 83rd Street, actually are 2 levels. We want to make sure there's some sort of structural integrity to the building itself. The city should have the opportunity to require some sort of structural study that is needed when we move forward with storage of vehicles and having them on the floor of the building. With that concludes my staff report. Certainly stand for any questions that you may have. The planning commission was in concurrence with the applicant's desire to do this with these conditions.
Questions for Brad?
Yeah, I got one.
Okay.
I like, first thing came to mind to me was no outdoor storage. That was obviously item number 1. But you said something that you said that it should be be a regular business, have regular business hours, and it says a showroom for display and sales inside the permanent structure must be established. Okay, so a showroom must be established and business hours posted. Now, those business hours could be by appointment only. I mean, by the way it's written. That's not what you said.
Yeah, I guess
So-
it's kind of, yeah, I don't know, and maybe defer to Patrick on that, but our intent was to have at least at some point during the day, during the week, that from 1 to 5 or whatever, 2 days a week, that the doors are open. And they still could be,
Yeah, I guess I don't have a problem with it being, if it's a very niche business, to be a by appointment only. But when you said that you wanted these regular business hours, I thought, well, that isn't really what this says. It just says your business hours have to be posted,
Yeah,
and they
'cause,
could
I
be
mean,
by appointment.
As long
only.
as I posted 8 to 5, it doesn't. I mean, posted doesn't mean
You're actually open.
you're actually open.
I suppose,
Yeah,
I suppose.
and again, I'll say I don't think that it has to be open to the public, kind of a thing. If it's a specialty business, it may be by appointment. So anyway, I don't know how we want to address that, but I thought it was inconsistent with what you said.
Well, that was sort of the intent that we had talked about the planning commission. That there at least would be some point during the week that the doors would be open. And that, general public would just come in and browse.
The other business down there isn't that way.
Mercado.
Mercado. So it seems kind of,
Yeah, neither is the sports shop.
I mean, yeah, nothing really is down there.
Would love to have walk-up retail, but I'm thinking if it's that kind of a use, it may not be.
One thing also the applicant, or said that they did want to have some retail, not just automobiles, signage and more this nostalgia kind of memorabilia as part of their business operation as well.
Did they indicate any level of volume that they were hoping for on an annual basis?
Just some preliminary discussions. They weren't really thinking about they're going to be cranking through cars, maybe a couple of months, something like that. I mean, that's what they discussed with me. But who knows?
But not like
It's gonna be better.
claiming we're a business. We have cars in here just to show, but nothing moving.
Yes. Yeah. It's not intended to be a high volume operation.
He did indicate he does want the dealer's license, so that means was it more than 8? What's the cutoff per year where you need a dealer's license? Like 8 or 10?
Yeah, it was pretty low.
Yeah.
Pretty low.
But you have to be moving cars to maintain it at
Yeah, you
least.
do have to sell
Yeah.
some cars, but it isn't, it's not, I think it's rated 4 or 5. It's not a lot, but it just
And you wouldn't even have to move them from that location. Just that business has to transact.
Right.
Well, and with that, if we're going to require that 80% be antique, is he going to give us a report every year? Or, I mean, because what if that isn't work for him and he needs to sell 10 cars that are to keep his license and he wants to do that, but none of them are antiques? But he's not selling them from the spot, but it seems just, I don't know. I think getting kind of specific in some of those areas might make it difficult to monitor and follow.
I like the part about that it is for a very specific use. If we're going to sell cars downtown like that. But you're right, Lori. How, whose role is it? Codes enforcement? Is it an annual report? And where did the transaction really
Is
occur?
it complaint driven?
Where are the sales taxes paid? Because we can't, you can't use that as a measure. So, is there a reporting mechanism here? Good point.
And I'm not against it. I'm all for it, but I just don't know if that part needs to be in there, because does it really matter that greatly whether it's an antique car or not an antique car?
I think having it in there clearly gives intent.
Well, and
I just don't know how it's enforced.
that's why
Right.
it's a special use.
Yeah, I don't think we would be just approving a car lot downtown or car sales downtown if it were not the specialty type of business.
And I just wanted to comment, I listened to the planning commission discussion, and then I came up with the criteria, and a lot of it was just, like, for example, the 80-20 wasn't really discussed, but I just thought that it was better to give some flexibility, given that it's gonna be a special use permit, but the way I was thinking of it is, displayed or offered for sale. So at any time, if code officer went into that building, it's displayed or offered for sale. So you could look at what's there, and that it would be pretty easy to tell if they're meeting this requirement.
Okay.
And,
It's not the sales, then. There's nothing about the sales. It's
There's
just
nothing
what's
about
in
the
the store.
sales.
Basically, in the store, it has to be antique.
I mean, it sounds like we're generally in favor.
Yeah, I'm going to see if
Okay.
Kevin Ritter, any comments to offer?
No, I think they've all been covered, Mayor. I'm good with it.
Danny, would you like to?
I'm in favor of it also, Mayor. I'm kind of curious about what Lori said too, how you look at that and percentages and the deal, but I think we're going to have to just go with it this way until we get a complaint.
Yeah, I do have one other question.
Okay.
So this is a text amendment to the zoning regulations. This isn't the SUP itself. So this really could occur at any building downtown, any building in that district,
In that.
anywhere in the city.
C1 district is just the 2-block downtown area. Though.
That is okay. So C1 is that for now.
For now.
Is it a historic or is it a?
It's kind of
Is it tied
defined
to
as the
the-
zero setback. It's not necessarily tied to
What do we call the uptown?
overlay
Plan.
thing.
Yeah.
No, not necessarily.
But it is a very specific downtown type
Mhm.
zoning and not something that could be applied out
Yeah.
on 91st
Right.
Street or something.
Right.
Okay. Well, then with that, I guess we'll see where we're at with it. I'll make a motion to approve a text amendment allowing auto sales in the C1 zoning district under an SUP process based on the language provided in the staff report tonight.
I'll second the motion.
We have Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Lane,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you, Council and Mayor. The motion is carried.
Our next item is item C, consider bids for street patching.
All right, thank you, Mayor. 95th Street, actually, you've approved repairs for 95th Street doing a chip seal, granite seal. As part of that process, we were going to have our city staff, city crews, do some patching work. Placed. And that was our plan to do those in-house with some street department staff. However, with the COVID pandemic and some temporary furloughs that we got here, city, we don't have the ability to complete all those items. So we went out and got bids from several construction companies to take care of those items. I personally went out and marked the locations and provided that information to construction companies and bids for doing this work. That needs to be done prior to the granite chip seal. We've already approved. With that, Magnet Construction had to $14,000 done this type of work with Magnet before on several locations around town. Actually, this is what the 90s for the last year. And also Oak Country 8. So we feel confident, even though their number is quite a bit low. I did talk to Phil McNally about this price, and he felt like they could do that. And, okay, you're the winner by far. So, motion to recommend proceed with Magnet Construction to patching and ready.
Okay. Questions? Motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. We approve McEnany Construction for the granite chip seal and crack sealing.
Okay, we have a motion, a second.
I'll second
I'll
that.
second.
All right,
Good.
we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ritter,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
Thank you, Council. Motion carried.
Okay. Item D, consider bids for street resurfacing.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Let's follow up on that.
Fred, could you speak up just a little bit or into the mic a little?
Okay, all right, well, this mic is not,
Oh, you're not even plugged in.
no.
Oh, it's not?
Go ahead. Never mind.
All right. Pause for technical difficulty.
You just needed him to speak up loud enough that it came through somebody else's mic.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. No?
There.
All right, excellent.
I can hear you now.
I got to tone it down a little bit.
Yeah, I'm looking down now.
Following up on street projects for 2020, wanted to continue with the ultra-thin bonded asphalt surfacing that we've been doing on Lexington. We also did some of that on Commerce Drive several years ago and bid this project. We did receive 2 bids from McEnany Construction and Superior Bowen. I'm glad that there is another. In the past, we've used Lenex's pricing, and many times McEnany was the only firm that was doing this type of work, even though it's been a pretty popular process. Overland Park does it, Lenexa does it, Shawnee does it. However, Superior Bowen has now jumped into the market and is now providing bids for the UBAS work. With that being said, McEnany still won the price, or won the bid as far as going from Wea Street to Valley Spring. And so we'd like to proceed with that. Markings, we did take the markings out of remember when we did the sidewalk on the Jersey barriers along the street, we did have the markings in that contractor's project. However, we took those out and put those in with the UBAS work. So that will be completed by McInerney Construction when they do the UBAS work. So with that, I recommend McInerney Construction for the UBAS project from Wea Street to Valley Spring Drive.
Questions for Brad or a motion?
I'll make a motion. We approve the bid from McInerney Construction for $152,500 for the UBAS project for 2020.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Hannah Michael,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Daniels.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Motion carried.
Okay. Item E, consider final plat for Brook West Estates 2.
All right, thank you, Mayor. This is an interesting project in the fact that the preliminary plat for Brook West was submitted in 2003, and here we are 17 years later now with a final plat for this location. Part of our review of staff was to just evaluate the 2003 preliminary plat just to make sure that it was consistent with what was approved. There is some slight different configuration with the lots. However, there are 5 lots that will be completed with this project, and there are 5 in 2003. One thing that's a little different is lot 28 is actually going to be a buildable lot. At one point there was some discussion about turning that over to the Homes Association. Apparently the Nate Harding has a contract on this lot, and they're still going to tie into the city sewer, so they're going to be lifting the sewage from that location all the way up to the cul-de-sac bulb. There will be some right-of-way dedication and some easements. That's another reason why it's here before the council, as far as needing to accept the dedication of easements and right-of-way. We did go through our process as far as evaluating the configuration, making sure that it meets the current requirements for the Soto City Code, and found that it was in compliance. And we recommend approval of acceptance of easements and rights-of-way for Brook West Phase 2, Brook West Estates Phase 2.
Questions for Brad on this or a motion to accept?
I will make a motion to accept the final plat for Brook West Estates Phase 2.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ritter,
Yes.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Hannah Michael,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you, council and mayor. Motion carried.
All right, well, I will gladly turn over the lectern to somebody else.
Item F, consider proposals for survey of park acquisition property.
Yes, council. If you'll remember, we entered into a purchase option agreement with Sigmund for 30 acres total property across from Riverfest Park. We decided that even though the bond referendum failed, and that we wouldn't necessarily have a project to go there, that we are still going to pursue the acquisition of that property and use cash on hand in the general fund to do that. Part of our obligations associated with the purchase option is to get a pre-transfer survey of the parcels in question. We are buying 3 parcels, but they're actually in the survey, there's actually 4 parcels included because there's some question with the adjoining landowner to the west as to exactly where the property line lies. So the existing owner is friendly with the neighbor to the west and wants to make sure that they are not perpetuating a property line dispute that could otherwise be settled now. So there's actually 4 parcels to be surveyed. Scope of services was sent to several surveying firms in the area. We got five bids back. The lowest one was Allen Brand Drews and Associates for $6,680. So, based on the fact that the scope of services were all the same and Allen Brand Drews was low, I'm recommending accepting their proposal. So, I'd like your approval to do so.
Questions or a motion to accept?
Can I just ask a question to be clear? Since our company was one of the ones that proposed, is there a conflict in me voting in this?
Not if you're.
Not the
it's
one.
Only if it benefits.
Okay.
I'll make a motion then to accept the proposal from Allen Brand Drews and Associates in the amount of $6,680.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Lane,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Montemichael,
Yes.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Ritter.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Motion carried.
Okay. I think we're now all to the point we've been waiting for to receive and discuss our draft 2021 budget.
Yes, we are, and we're all very excited to do so.
That is why we are here tonight.
I
We are
appreciate
live
your
again.
patience for the next 4 hours as I go through in meticulous detail
Sit back and roll.
every number that's been provided to you. No, I hope not to belabor any of the points here, but we do have some new information I'd like to go over with you after I submitted the staff report and put it in the council packets on Friday. So this is your first look at the draft budget. You'll remember back in April we did a look at some extensive modeling, 5-year projective modeling to try and figure out where we should head in light of the COVID shutdowns and their likely impact on revenues, most notably sales tax revenues, but also other revenues moving forward and growth patterns for the next 5 years. As I indicated back then, lots of other communities, including the county and the other larger cities in the county, were looking at scenarios that had a 2020 reduction in sales tax revenues from 10 to 40%, and seeing how that might affect their budgets for this year. What we decided on was an approach that kind of split the baby. We decided on an approach that would take 2020 sales tax revenues, reduce them by 20% this year, and then after that model a recession type scenario for the rest of our 5-year projections. So what that means for us in comparing a recession that we had back in 07, 8, 9, and 10, it would be a further decline of another 3% sales tax for 2021, then leveling out and then continuing a slow recovery process thereafter. Property tax is less impacted, but still we took our property tax increase projections and lowered those expectations. So in the end, what it meant for us was that with those revenue projections, we needed to approach this year's budget and possibly next year's budget as well, with the aim to look at maybe a 5% reduction in commodities and contractual cost allocations throughout the general fund budgets. We also decided that for next year at least, the merit increase for employee wages would be 0, and cost of living we'd still apply a cost of living increase somewhere around 1.5%. There had been thoughts about increasing staffing levels for next year, maybe even in the year after. Those are off the table. There's no staffing increases throughout the 5-year projections. So, while our focus right now is 2021 budget and what we're going to allocate for next year, the guide really is the 5-year forecast and how those curves look moving out 5 years, because we know what we do now impacts them greatly. So I'll just follow along then in the staff report. I've kind of been through the general thought on the general approach. And I'd like to now go into the revenue side then, and then we'll talk about expenses. I've highlighted some policy discussions, policy questions on the expense side throughout the report. So in the report, I've got just our budget time frame, which is, we all know, toward the end of August we need to be done with this. I've also got the 5-year projections that I think you've seen before. We include those in our budget spreadsheet each year, and then the actual departmental line item budget allocations are also in there. So there's lots of figures that are in your staff report that I won't go over every number as I threatened to do. So starting with general fund revenues, then 2021 valuations and mill levy. We received the county appraiser's evaluation report in February. I think the mayor and I met with the new county appraiser. Got that in February, obviously before any of the COVID impacts hit us at all. And DeSoto's increased valuation was 9.43%. So the total, the appraised value was 9.4%, and the total assessed valuation increased by 8.2%. So there's a chart there on page 2 that just shows the progression of property tax and total valuations since 2017, a very steady increase. Currently, for personal property taxes and utilities, those are set by the state. We don't get those at least until next month. So those are still estimates at this time. So in order to calculate what our mill levy is going to be, we're using a total valuation figure of about $89.7 million for the city. And that's the 8.2% increase that we're talking about. We are still under the requirements of the property tax lid. So I run those calculations. Essentially, we can't collect any more tax than we did last year, except for a cost of living, basically a regional inflationary index, and the percentage of new growth that we've had in the city. So surprisingly, according to the county appraiser's report, our new growth only totaled about 1.8%. And that surprised me that it was that low because of how many building permits we issued last year. Maybe those permits haven't worked their way through the valuation process just yet. I know the valuation was done November, December before it was put out in February, so perhaps those haven't hit yet. Pretty low for that. The regional COL, cost of living index, still going to be about 1.5. So we can only collect about 3.3% more than we did last year. So if you look at what we did last year, increase that by 3.3%, and divide that by our total valuation, you get the city mill levy. So the maximum that we can levy this year turns out to be a mill levy of roughly 13.5, which is down about 0.65 mils from 2020. Also, the mill levy is affected by, there's 2 other funds, debt service fund. We raise property taxes to pay off our debt, and law enforcement as well. So when you look at the debt service fund, we will be issuing, the capital improvements plan actually contemplated us issuing new debt this year, $750,000. With the bond market the way it is right now, and with our fund balance in the capital improvement fund, we can do all the projects we're doing this year with our existing cash on hand. We don't have to bond for that this year. And the advice from our financial advisors is go ahead and hold off because the bond market's it's flaky right now. We just don't know where we'll be. So I'd like to delay that until next year. But regardless, next year, because of that, we're going to have to increase the mills in the debt service. And I'm suggesting here from 4.2 up to 5 mils. And this chart shows the history of the debt service fund balance and our mill levy. So we're down at 4.2 right now. That'll need to increase to 5, and then by 2023 we'll have to bump that up to 6 mils because we have more debt in the capital improvements fund for future projects. Law enforcement fund has been a very steady fund throughout the years. I do suggest a decrease in the mill levy for the law enforcement of about 0.3 mils. So we'll go down from 5.85 down to 5.5. Still very healthy fund balances in that fund. There's no particular reason we need a bunch of fund balance in the law enforcement fund. So that's what this draft budget recommends. So the overall mill levy picture for 2021 is actually a reduction of about 0.6 mills. This chart I've got on the screen on page 4 of the staff report shows how the mills have reduced each year from 2018 on. Uh-oh. I just knocked myself over here. Let me get back up and running. Sorry. So that just shows a further reduction, driven mostly by the forced reduction in general fund mill levy, essentially from 14.1 down to 13.5, essentially. This chart just kind of shows that broken down into general law and debt service in total over the last several years. Sales tax revenue. So we talked a lot in our modeling about where sales tax revenue was going to go. We decided on a major decrease for 2019 that puts us here, at roughly at about a 1.5 level, down from 1.9 or so million total. So this is total city sales tax, city use tax, county sales, and county use. So total sales tax hitting the general fund. There's also a portion of sales tax that hits the debt service fund. These figures don't include that. So the debt service funds kind of stands on its own. I did model the similar reductions in the debt service fund too. So that mill levy in the debt service fund accounts for this as well. So this is what we decided on. Drastic reduction this year, a further reduction next year, a flattening off, and then a very slow recovery. You can see that, we don't approach anywhere near. I mean, by the end of the projection period, our sales tax still won't be where it was in 2017. So this represents a pretty significant impact, a long-term impact on the sales tax. I'm going to pull up now the work I've been doing today, actually, on, boy, I hope this works. Yes. On sales tax so far this year. We've been waiting with bated breath on what our numbers look like. So we do have, I've already showed you the sales tax numbers for the first quarter, so January, February, and March, but those lag by a month. So we really had December, January, and February shown for the first quarter. And of course, that didn't really have any of the COVID impacts in it at all. So what I did today was I got on the state's website. They've already compiled all the numbers for April. Although we haven't gotten them yet, we haven't gotten that distribution, the state already has those numbers. So we have everything from January through April of this year, and these are the actual real months. And very surprising to me is the fact that our sales tax numbers are up almost 20% from 2019 for those first 4 months. Mm-hmm. Why that is, I've not had a chance to dig into much, but it just appears like the HARPs, the gas stations, Intervet, all of those have had increased activity. I don't see a big user here that's driving the day here. But
would it be value of construction products associated with, you talk about all the building permit activity?
It could be, yeah.
There's a lot of sales tax paid on those construction products.
Yeah, I haven't dug into it. Like I've looked at our major ones, to see kind
because
of
it wouldn't show up as retail, but it would show up as product delivered to
and
the
it'll
center.
show up from odd places too.
So is that actually showing April's a 23% increase over last year?
April is at 23. Let's total 27.
Oh.
Yeah. Wow. Now,
But that includes like online sales. People are using
the use part of it.
the use
But-
Now
permit.
that the use is calculated.
But even the sales, even just the brick and mortar sales is up.
Or up.
Well, HARPs had an amazing first quarter.
So this is fantastic
Home
news.
Depot, I'm sure.
I want to verify it. I mean, the check's not in the bank yet on April, but it is on January, February, and March. These checks are in the bank. This is real. That's real. So it kind of leads you to want to think about maybe changing some of these, some of these very conservative, as it turns out, pretty conservative sales tax projections here. And I think in another month I'll be comfortable maybe doing that. And so we may be able to roll back in some of the stuff we're going to talk about here in a minute. The reductions in in road maintenance and commodities and wage increases. Had a teleconference this afternoon with county managers and what they're doing about wage compensation increases for the next year, and I was surprised none of them are very conservative with that. They're all moving forward, at least budgeting, wage increases from 3 to 4%. That surprised me to hear that from the group. So if these trends hold,
was anybody else as far along? Had anybody else looked at the sales tax stuff like you had yet?
No. This was all kind of news to them. Although I shouldn't say that. Olathe did say, no, it was Overland Park said that theirs are down 10%.
Okay.
But 10% is twice as good as we were figuring, being down 20. If you can look at it that way. Yeah, they were the only ones, but I don't think anybody had gotten on the state's website and really had a look at what April was doing. Yeah, they're all kind of still waiting for those numbers.
Yep.
So interesting to me, maybe less interesting to other, but good news. So yeah, I think we can, if, like I said, in a month from now, be in a much better position to make this call, and this still gives us plenty of time to make these adjustments. Any other questions, comments about the sales tax stuff?
Well, it may kind of be sales tax related, but I'm on the Johnson County Economic Research Institute board, and they're putting together the projections for Johnson County that the county's using for their budgeting purposes.
Yeah.
They're basing it on Frank Link from Mid-America Regional Council, who's using Moody's projections and regional projections. And I guess the observation would be that, they're projecting a decline, but by even in the kind of the lowest estimates, mid 21, GDP overall is up and runs, they're showing 5% for a while. So I guess my thought would be, you're projecting a pretty conservative climb out, or a pretty low climb out, and there's no reason for us to be overly optimistic about it. But I think when Siri comes out with their forecast of our regional economic expected performance, it's probably going to show that we may actually realize a growth that's faster than you're projecting. So I think it's probably good to be conservative there, but I don't think the stuff I'm seeing from Siri, it would not indicate that it would be lower.
Yeah, and I would say to echo that, Overland Park did indicate that for their 2022, they're looking at growth year over year up to more than 10%, which is a little aggressive to me.
Yeah, I would think those are aggressive. But by mid 21, they're showing a pretty strong climb out.
Yeah. Well, that would be good news. That would be good news. Okay, thanks. So, do you know when? I guess county's on the same schedule we are, so we'll know.
Yeah, the county's on the same schedule. Obviously, all this. My email today just says that that they're working on the models. They've got some preliminary information, but it's not ready for publication yet.
Okay. Good. Okay, so in terms of other revenues, and those include franchise fees, planning fees, court fines, rentals. Projecting a pretty significant dip now, mostly because of recreation fees, really. But then a slow climb out just because of what I'm assuming for new growth in terms of building fees and planning fees, things like that. So these aren't quite I don't think they're as conservative as a sales tax, but definitely still a conservative picture. I did put a paragraph in here about potential stimulus funding. They're still politicking around in D.C. about potential stimulus funding, But as part of the first wave of CARES Act, the county did, or the states were allocated recovery funding for COVID-related expenses. And the county actually received $116 million already for that purpose. But the use of those funds are very narrow, and they have to be directly related to COVID expenses. At this time, it doesn't appear like you can offset a revenue deficit with them. This isn't just money they're given to prop up local, state, and local governments.
Yeah, I don't think it's not only doesn't appear; it's specifically
excluded.
Yeah, it's not that it appears.
Okay, yeah.
In the commission meeting today, they were talking about basically they're holding all those funds till they get clear answers on everything.
And I think the clear answer they want is a different answer. And honestly, so the National Association of Counties, I think, is approaching the federal legislature body about, could we relax those? Can we the funding is enough, the funding is fine. If we could just use it to
A little more latitude on how it is spent.
Yeah.
Maybe infrastructure.
Because there's no
funding
way.
or-
I mean, the county, I don't know how you'd come up with $116 million in Johnson County just on COVID-related expenses.
Well, they were
You
spending
couldn't
$1 million today on some election equipment that they could say was COVID-related because
Boy,
of damage.
yeah.
For spacing and sanitation.
Yeah.
And
I don't know. You could get there.
I don't know. I think
Oh,
they'd
you
find
could
a way
get there.
pretty quick if they really had to.
So yeah. So if
that much.
if any stimulus funding comes, if any of that stuff comes, really what it does for us is it just kind of takes our curve and just shifts it up. So all these projections, if wherever they're going to be, they just be a little higher on the graph, essentially. So that's it for the revenue side. I didn't go into a lot of specifics on the revenue side for the water and sewer, although I think we've talked before. Well, maybe I'll get to the water and sewer later. Let me leave it for later. No, I still have 15 minutes, Lori. 3 hours and 15 minutes.
15 hours?
So like we discussed on the expense side in the general fund, there's a number of policy, really kind of policy implications that we want you to consider, weigh in on. I'll just go through these. Stop me, pause the conversation if you have any questions or any feedback on this. Personnel side for 2021, at least right now, the way the projections are, it's a 1.5% wage increase. That really just represents cost of living, so the merit would be essentially zero. Of course, if the sales tax picture gets rosier, I would like to roll in some merit increase. I'm not sure what the percentage of there would be. Health insurance is a much better picture than we had this time last year. We've received confirmation from NPR that our health insurance will increase by 5.8%. That starts this year, July 1, and it'll go through the end of June of next year. So that's been rolled into the budget, and then for the projections, we're projecting 5% annual increases there forward. Vehicle equipment and replacement program, 2021, we've only got 2 new acquisitions. A new dump truck for the street department, and this would replace the one that we've got to shell out a bunch of money for. We talked about the last council meeting for the wiring harnesses. It would replace that vehicle, and then the other acquisition would be a lease on a new vacuum unit for the water department. The original program had another dump truck for the water department, but we're going to put that off until at least 2022. The summer concert series still funded $20,000. Building preservation funds, we're still funding those, but I've reduced them by 15%. So the fund for the pool and the community center has been reduced by 15%. The water and sewer funds, because those funds are generally not expected to be impacted by the downturn, I've left those the same as was for 2020. The road maintenance program, you'll remember we increased that budget funding to $450,000 last year. For the proposed budget you have in front of you, I've reduced that to $375,000. In 2020, it'll increase to 400,000, and then thereafter it'll be restored to its original 450,000. Additionally, the asphalt budget in the street department's been reduced by $10,000. So that's one. If we get more comfortable with these sales tax projections, that I'd like to restore as we go through the process. Economic development, kind of in keeping with our goal of 5% reductions across the board in commodities and contractual services, is reduced in the proposed budget by 5%. So instead of $90,000, it would be $85,500 next year. In terms of capital improvements, I've already discussed the debt issue that was planned for this year that I'd like to put off till next year. In addition, I'd like to increase that amount from $750,000 to $900,000, and that is really to account for some cash flow issues that we might have in the future years if we don't increase that. I did attach a new CIP spreadsheet in Exhibit D on your staff report. For 2020 or for 2021, we've got $2.7 million in CIP projects. There's a typo here, the first line for Miller Park drainage. That's not $1.1 million, that's only $50,000 for that. But the rest of these are correct, and if you correct that first one for Miller Park, you do get $2.7 million. So we're looking at pedestrian upgrades for Lexington Avenue. I think I see what I did here. The 1.1 million is the roundabout.
Yeah,
Yeah, the 1.1 million is the roundabout. I don't know where I messed that up. Sorry about that. Ottawa Street, reconstruction of Ottawa Street, we'll be designing that next year. So $280,000 for that. There's the drainage improvement for Miller Park. So I just mislabeled this. That's the roundabout project. Sorry. Lighting, field lighting in B Field, and then there's an $800,000 item, infrastructure improvements in support of economic development activities. We had quite a discussion about this in terms of the Southwest Area Plan and what might be needed and what economic opportunities might occur there. Sort of a placeholder right now, but the area I think that we're concentrating on is that new Southwest area. $50,000 for 83rd and Corliss intersection, and $55,000 for column lifts in the street shop. So that's the CIP. I mean, so really the only change is the from what we talked about in February on the CIP is moving that bond issue to 2021 rather than doing it this year. Another big ticket in the budget is this contingency allocation, and again for 21, we've got the same $750,000 contingency line item.
Mike, real quick on the prior line, that like the roundabout, that's still contingent upon like the cars funding half of it. So that's not the city saying we're going to pay 1.1 million for all of it.
That's right. That's just
still
the
pending certain things.
Yeah, that's the expense. So we've made will be making a CARS application for half the construction cost of that. So it's just over $430,000 CARS money. For that effort. Yep. On the contingency allocation, again, $750,000 in there for next year. And although these bullet items don't impact next year, we are going to be dipping into that contingency allocation this year by almost $400,000. And that is really it's kind of holdover from a couple of projects. The payment number 2 to RG Fiber, that we thought that was going to happen last year. So that was remember last year we had this unallocated or unspecified initiatives line item in the budget. We don't have that this year, but we had $2,000 allocated to RG Fiber for last year. We also had the Riverfest bathrooms, $230,000 for that, allocated under that line item last year. Those will both hit this contingency fund this year. The other thing that'll hit this is the emergency repairs we're doing to the culvert down on 95th Street. At the time I was writing this, I thought that was going to be about $60,000. It might be a little bit more than that. Not really sure. It could be 70, could be 80 by the time we're done. we're still talking with SRL about reimbursement for those expenses, but they will go out. We know that much. Whether they'll come back or not, we're still talking about. Then the last thing was the Riverfest stage cover concept plan. Remember when we were talking about doing this, we wanted to get some more concept plans, so we've hired Doug Pickard at Indigo Design to do that. And I think we'll have a presentation at the next meeting with some of those options. So total almost 400,000. That's 2020, and all those expenses have been allocated and accounted for in the 5-year projections that are included. So that being said, then here is the current projections for the end of year fund balance, accounting for the draft 2021 budget. This chart looks a lot like the one that I showed back in April, except it's blue and green now instead of red and green. The green shows our projections before all the COVID stuff hit, and then the blue projections show what we're thinking now. And again, hopefully the sales tax goes up. If we get COVID relief money, maybe this whole thing shifts upward. But the goal here is, and really our goal even before, with year-end fund balances up over 50% of our operating revenues, our fiscal policy says that we're going to aim to maintain 30% of our operating revenues as fund balance. So we wanted to decrease those in the out years to begin with. So the green line shows a decrease moderating toward 30-35. The blue line now, it actually, as we've got it programmed here, it hits the low point at about 25% in 2025. So I think from this point forward, I'm going to take the green off of here because that's no longer applicable. But I did want to show you kind of where we were and where we are now. So that's the general fund. Water fund, like we said, unlike the general fund, we don't expect it to have a big impact from the COVID or the potential recession that we're looking at. We budgeted a 1.8% increase this year that we don't need to do, so we won't. For 2021, I've shown a 1% rate increase, but revenues in that fund have been keeping pace nicely with the expenses. I think attributed a lot to the improvements that we've done and the efficiencies that we've realized from those improvements. On the expense side, overall, we're 2.2% higher, but that's really a result of the new vacuum extraction unit that I talked about acquiring, and an increase in transfers to the general fund. So we do have, and for years we've done this. We've transferred money from the water fund to the general fund to account for administrative costs, my time, Bonnie's time, utility billing stuff, but also to account for kind of some of the concept about franchise fees and the use of public rights of way for enterprise utilities. We've done $80,000 the last couple of years, and I'm bumping that to $100,000. And a lot of that is to help with this curve here. The increase in 20,000 helps with that curve. So in terms of the water fund projections, again, we're sort of in the same situation where we've got fund balances now well over 50%. And even with increased fund transfers to the general fund, we will take a hit next year, but still the long-term projections are still just moderating toward the 30% level where we want to be. Sewer fund is the same, much the same. Budgeted an increase this year. We don't need it. Budgeted a 0.5% increase next year. We'll see if we need that then. Expense is actually 1.8% below last year. And then the projections look like this. Again, it's not nearly as big a fund. You see where our balances are just over $400,000, but they're up over 50% of the operating revenue. So we're long-term projections showing those moderating toward actually in this case just over 40%. So that's the framework of the budget as we have now. So so here's the schedule. We're here on May 21st. We have to hold the public hearing, in August. The things due to the county by August 28th. So we've got June and July to work through the details and see where these sales tax numbers come in. Get ourselves comfortable, maybe with a less, more aggressive, maybe sales tax outlook for years in the future. Again, your document has these 5-year projections. And actually included in them are these other funds. So we have a number of other funds included in the budget. Refuse fund is one of them, special highways, parks, transient guest tax, and these maintenance funds that we talked about, the building maintenance funds. None of them are earth-shattering, really. Transient guest tax, I do project that we'll take quite a hit there. The electric reserve fund is one that I like to point out because here we're using this to fund our vehicle equipment replacement, and we're paying that back. And so you see 2021 fund balance is very healthy. 2022, in my projections anyway, moving that dump truck from the water department from 2021 to 2022 increases quite a bit the amount of funds going out of that fund in 2022. So the balance goes down, but we're still above 1.4 million before it rebounds pretty nicely. So I'll stop there. These budget worksheets, these are what will comprise most of our budget book, along with the narratives that generally that I put in there and the 5-year projections. So I'll stop there, answer any questions, any discussions you might want to have.
Okay. Questions? Lori? No? Rob?
Not totally related to the budget, but on the water and talking about water revenues, is there any update on the water rights, water reselling that we talked about a while back?
Johnson 7,
and that would.
Yeah, I don't really have an update on that. We shot them a price. Ball's been in their court for quite a while.
Okay.
It was before all the COVID stuff.
And then service territory areas.
Yeah, that's all still on the burner, but I don't have an update.
Okay.
Kevin?
Was there a date on that, Mike?
No, Danny, I don't. I'll have to reach back out to them. We haven't really set a date certain when we want to have that.
Well, on our proposal, can we also include a date? That this is good until this date, so that we can, so we can ballpark it in, where at least we can say, hey, these prices that we're quoting you today is good till this date. So
yeah, that makes sense. I don't know that I didn't. It wasn't really a proposal. It was pretty clear that it was non-binding. We discussed it here, and so the council is aware of what we're showing them, but I don't know that we're to the point of a proposal. But that's a good point to make. When I reach out to them, I'll obviously let them know. Things change daily, so we'll have to relook at those numbers as we go on.
Thank you.
Kevin, did you have?
No.
You were. All right. Kevin Ritter, do you have any comments or questions on this?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Okay. I hope we have a rosier picture than. I certainly, as with respect to our salaries, or what we're able to pay our if the economy bounces back quicker, we're going to have to be aggressive with our we're going to have to be prepared to give people raises because I would see there'll be a demand in the market for labor, and that there'll be pressures on us that. So,
Yeah.
if we have a fast recovery, we're going to have to be nimble about whether what we're able to do with respect to I think salaries a little bit.
Well, not only that, but they would deserve it. I mean, if we're, employees always deserve that.
Yeah.
So, if you can do it.
Yeah, it's not about what they deserve. It's about what we can afford.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. We will move on. Item 5 is an executive session, which we do not have any of, right?
That's correct.
So continue, Mike. Advisory reports.
Yes, Council, I want to go over the ever-changing reopening plan. As we know it at this moment, at 8:19 on May 21st, could change at 8:20. As you know, the governor announced phase 1.5. I think since we looked at this reopening plan 2 weeks ago, there's been two announcements.
Phase 2 starts tomorrow.
Yeah, so there's phase 1.5 was added, and then phase 2 is no longer phase 2. They calling it phase 2, but this ain't phase 2. So we've been in the process of working through
Adapting
some changes. Yeah, adapting as best we can to those changes. And what I've got shown on the screen here is our current reopening plan, which takes out any reference to the county's plan because it's pretty clear the county is just going to follow the state's plan, might not follow the state's timeline, but I think definitely will follow the basic parameters of the plan in terms of group gatherings and restrictions and types of businesses that can open and when and which phase. So what we've done then is try to modify our plan toward those. So what we did in terms of public meetings and facilities, and I think I'm going to try, let me see if I can get the full markup viewed here.
I was going to say, everything I've seen recently looks like counties get follow state's timeline too.
Yeah, it seems like they're really trying.
At this point.
It seems like they're really trying.
It would take something drastic to move along.
I think it would,
Yeah,
right?
England Masters has backed off and letting the county follow the state without intervention.
Yep. So if you look at the phasing plan, then phase 2, like you said, Rob, starts tomorrow. For us, when you look at the gatherings over 15 and some of the other parameters that the state's recommending about gatherings and stuff, I don't think it'd be appropriate yet to open City Hall. So the opening of City Hall, I've moved to phase 3, which would start no sooner than June 18. In-person meetings resume. So for our council, maybe the expectation is as we get into phase 3, we can open the council meetings to the public. I discussed a little bit with a council member this afternoon that if we still have council members that aren't comfortable attending a public meeting with public, we'll keep the Zoom or the GoToMeeting video conferencing active and live, so you could still do that and attend remotely. But we would have members of the public, and of course with distancing and all the recommendations that come along with that. Also, in phase 2, we'll resume reservations for city facilities. So. Anything in the senior center or rec center that has a reservation associated with that, we'd resume there.
Would that include gymnasium?
Yeah, I'll get to gymnasium. I may have misspoken. Yeah, so on the Parks and Rec side then, we're in phase 1.5. So phase 2, we're going to open the fitness room with guidelines, but still the senior center and the park shelters and the gym wouldn't be open at that time. those moved to phase 3, primarily because of the 15-person limit. The outdoor sports fields and rentals will start actually in this phase, but we can't make it happen tomorrow. It's got to be Monday, so we're saying May 25th is when we start. We'll rent out the ball fields for practices. We open the courts, all the outdoor sports stuff.
Have we heard from
Rental
Baldwin and
rule.
Eudora on actual games?
Yeah, quite a bit. Now, this didn't take into account the governor's announcement Tuesday, but before then, Jay and Justin were meeting with the league. The league had decided that they would not do league games at that point, but I think with the recent announcement, they're going to take up the conversation again and see if we can have some sort of a season.
Yeah, because games are allowed to start tomorrow.
Right.
According to the governor, so that does change timeline.
Right, it does. But before that, they weren't.
Yeah.
I mean, so still working through that. One of the options was, and I think the way the league was kind of headed, was that each city would kind of do its own league, have games just within your city. Maybe it's a sandlot type of situation where whatever kid and whatever age groups just show up at a certain time, and there's some coaches there, and you divide the teams up and you play. The most recent thing I heard from Jay, talked to him yesterday, that the league is discussing is that the Kansas Parks has some guidelines about these leagues. One of the guidelines is that teams from counties who have over 500 cases shouldn't travel to counties who have under 500 cases. So that's a problem for us because we have over, and Douglas and Franklin counties don't. So it's this whole moving, juggling knives things with the leagues right now. So we'll probably refine what we're doing. We'll announce what the league's doing, what we're doing within the next week or so. For right now, we know we can't. We can't. So. The only other thing to really discuss then is the pool, and I don't know. We plan on having kind of a more robust discussion about this at our next meeting because we'll need to make some decisions at that point. But right now, in terms of the pool, the messaging that we're given is consistent with what we said all along, is that we can't open that pool unless we're in phase 4, and unless we reach phase 4 by June 22nd, which is the state's earliest date that they could get into phase 4, then we can't open the pool for the season. Really, practically, internally, what that means for us is unless we're in phase 3 by June 8th, then we won't really have enough time to open up. So that June 8th is an important date. This is all done with the caveat that the governor is not just going to completely blow up the plan altogether and have different guidelines and recommendations moving forward.
What phase 4 means?
I don't know what phase. Yeah,
I mean, the dates though haven't meant anything. I mean,
no,
because
I don't
they're
think
moved
they ever
forward or
have.
backwards.
Or the
So
numbers. I mean,
Dates
so
or
it
the numbers
really,
or the messaging or
but so you had on there phase 4, the pool. We were saying June 29th, but now you're saying June, if we don't make it by June 22nd.
Yeah, because
why?
Previously, the phase 4, the state date for phase 4, the earliest was June 29th. Now it's June 22nd.
Well, I get that, but you're moving it forward instead of, I mean,
we should still be able to.
as long as it's the 29th.
The state's allowing pools to open June 8th.
I don't
So
think that's possible with the guidelines. I mean, it wouldn't for us.
Okay, but they moved it up. The state moved it up to where June 8th they can open. Not saying we want to, but at that point it moves up when our lifeguards can start the training, and the June 24th date was based upon lifeguard training. So if they can be training sooner, that doesn't necessarily mean we have to move up the deadline date for decision of the pool opening, does it?
I'm not sure that the date was based on lifeguard training from the state's plan. I didn't.
No, our plan was the fact that if we're going to do it by phase 4, we need to be able to train lifeguards by in phase 3.
Right.
But if we're in phase 3 in June 8 instead of June 24 when it originally was, before all of a sudden she moved, because originally it was phase 2 would be not before June 1st, phase 3 would be not before June 15th. So if we have the ability to start training them a week or two earlier, that shouldn't move up our decision deadline.
I can see where you're going. Yeah. And you're right. It doesn't necessarily need to. The only reason I moved our date up was to just make it
Aligned with
consistent
phase
with the
4.
state's date, phase 4 date, which probably doesn't mean anything.
So what we would say there is it won't be no phase 4, something the 29th.
I guess my point was that if we have until the 29th to be able to economically and feasibly have pool open for a time, you're moving it forward because of the phases, but that date really shouldn't be the date for our pool. The 29th is really when we said, okay, if we can't open it before this date, it's not worth it financially.
Yeah.
So now you're moving it to the 22nd because of this, but that's the financial part hasn't changed. So that was my point. I don't care about the phases and stuff. I was just saying that solid date line that we need to be in phase 4 by.
We talked about July 1 open as a possibility.
Right.
Previous. So, I mean, if it's still economical to open by July 1.
Probably.
That was all.
Yeah, I agree.
So.
Yeah, there wasn't any other reason other than coincided with the state's date. And Rob, you're right. I mean, it's training lifeguards, but it's also filling the thing and getting it ready and everything that goes along with that. We wanted to have a more robust discussion at the next meet because we kind of do need to set some expectations.
And I know some of the things that would need to be discussed would be, do we allow non-residents versus residents, especially if other cities close their pools so we don't become the magnet for everybody? And that, I mean, there's just, so.
Yeah. The only other thing I forgot to mention was all of our furloughed employees, regardless of what phase we're in or what plan we're in, I'm calling all of them back June 1st.
Yeah.
So they've already been notified of that. I don't care where we are with phasing. It's just June 1st. So they have some certainty there. Okay. Well, it'll change, I'm sure, by the time we talk again.
Well, the governor's having a big call with us all tomorrow afternoon, so we'll know.
Oh, all right.
Right.
All right. Well, let me know.
3 days later? 4 days later?
What else you got, Mike?
Okay. That was all. That's all.
Okay. Patrick?
Yes.
You had some papers here.
Just wanted to get a little feedback from you on this potential island annexation. I think I explained it in the email. We have a property owner, at least they feel like they're in sort of a pickle by having went under contract on a 7-acre tract that if they stay in the county, they will not be able to build on that tract. So they've asked that the city annex them, and I did get a little feedback from the county. Looks like at the minimum they're going to want a lot of information from the city if we were to go the route of island annexation. But I just didn't want to bring back a formal resolution. If this was something that you guys just thought is not something we really want to pursue.
Didn't we just do an annexation on Ricky property out there at 95th and Sunflower Road?
Different. It was for the Sims, the economic development.
So he didn't because I thought he was buying this piece too. He didn't annex this in with his other piece.
No, not.
And he's since
he just did the piece on the north side of 95th.
The other one wasn't island either.
It wouldn't have been had that all occurred, but he never he never even had
the contract went through.
Yeah, he never even had a contract on the other piece. It was just sort of in discussion that he would buy
the
other parcel.
Wanted
also.
him to buy that when we bought that.
Yeah.
But we did annex that. This.
Yeah, we annexed and de-annexed.
Had we not de-annexed, then this would be contiguous and
Right.
we wouldn't have the problem.
Yeah, because the piece that Sims was looking at was contiguous.
So how is it contiguous and this is not? I guess.
Good question.
Because
that's the same barriers are there.
No,
not exactly. So this tract here
is that's
simple. Yeah. Right. It's
easement.
Kind of still owned by the USA. It's a road right of way. So that was a road right of way. So by virtue of that, plus we'd already annexed it. So this strip had been in the city to begin with.
We had annexed that little strip.
Yeah, it was already in the city historically from the 90s.
Because we annexed to the center line of Sunflower or
Right.
whatever, some point over there. Okay, gotcha. All right.
Whereas this tract here that separates the property from our water tower site is not. That's a fee simple title. And it's not annexed.
So they're fee simple south of 95th. And it was
So they wanting to annex the 10 or the 7? The
Both.
7? Oh, both of them?
Both. These two. Yeah. So, in my initial discussions with them, I thought, we can annex, we're contiguous. And so, and then Patrick and Brad started looking at it like, wait a minute, we're not contiguous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next year,
Well,
that's a whole other ball of wax.
So I guess the obvious question to me is, are we, there's a reason that the county has restrictions on lot size, and that is to be able to keep developable land together.
Right.
And so, just getting this late in the day, I didn't even get a chance to look at our future land use plan in terms of what, are we looking at a rural residential environment out there?
We had, I think, on the west side of Sunflower Road, we had started plugging that in on the new comp plan as residential, right?
Let me
I don't know that it was plugged in rural.
Yeah, I was going to say that was one of my questions, was comparing it to what the future land use was.
Yeah.
Right, because that's a corner. It's a hard corner. And so it's also an area where we would expect that to be platted and the right-of-way dedicated to give us thoroughfare width right-of-way. So I think associated with any annexation agreement, I would want to be sure that we cover the ground of having it platted and the right-of-way dedicated.
Mm-hmm.
And then that also begins to get out into that southwest area where we're looking at development opportunity. And, if you take a 17-acre chunk out of a hard corner and eliminate it from infrastructure districts that could be created to build sewer and road, namely roads that are going to front that, that cost then has to be borne elsewhere. So what do we want to do in terms of thinking about infrastructure districts?
It was west of that it went to.
Yeah, so the 7-acre we got as residential, but the 10-acre tract is still light industrial.
Yeah, and I don't know what area they're wanting to build a home on, I take it, or something to that effect. But I think, that's on major, will be major road corridors in any form of thinking that we're thinking about. If Sunflower happens, if some of these economic development pursuits happen that we have actively submitted on out in that area, I think that could interrupt, development pattern. If we're just going to let it be, if we're going to annex it as an island for a rural residential use. So I have some reservations about it.
Yeah, and the thought was when we spoke with the property owners last week, and I thought this may be kind of an easy decision because I reached out to the county and thought if the county pretty readily said this is not something we would really support, then it would seem that there's no point in really pursuing it. But as I indicated this afternoon, the planning department got he really didn't go one way or the other, but did indicate they would need a lot of information about from the city before they would be comfortable taking a position.
What's a lot of information and what type of information?
It was.
It's in
It's
the
on that
email
letter.
there, but some of the issues I think that Kevin mentioned, but
Right.
what's
the plan?
Yeah, what's the plan? And you know, we had a very commercial project immediately across the street, so we've identified that that's something we're very willing to look at for that area. And we've also said that southwest area, and we've gone around and around and around. It's the only direction we can go for commercial growth. There is no other direction. There's plenty of other directions to go for residential growth. So being on a thoroughfare corridor corner, I just want to be sure that we get the ability to construct and fund infrastructure through that area.
So was that kind of the consensus?
What? Yeah, I would have the same if we're just. We don't want to put a barrier to the ultimate development of that area to its highest and best use as we see it. If we start plopping houses on.
Yeah, because we've already can presume that a part of that 95th Street, east of here is in residential piano key lots. So, we already know we've got to jump over that, and do we want to keep doing that? But if they want to stay in the county and build on 10 acres, that's fine. It keeps it of a size that you can redevelop later.
I was going to say, I think part of it is they can't build on the 7.
Correct.
So,
but they could go acquire. I don't know what they. Obviously, I'm going to guess they want to build on the 7 is why.
They want.
Yeah,
that's why they want to do.
They probably
this.
want to split the 10.
Yeah, and they probably want to split the 10. So.
Yeah,
you might want to split the 7 and the 10.
Yeah. So if we annex it, then we're going to have to make the decision to allow that. If we don't annex it, it's not our decision to have to allow it. It's the county's.
Because if you annex it and zone it to residential, and they come in with a lot split, that's I don't have any really way to deny that.
Right.
It'd be the rezoning question, which would bring up all all these things you're discussing.
My preference would be to see it stay in the county, but I'm just one.
Yeah, and it's completely discretionary with you on whether you want to pursue an island annexation. So I'll just let the property owner know that kind of consensus of the discussion.
I didn't hear any strong argument the other direction, so I'd say that's our consensus.
Okay. Danny and Kevin, do they have any comments?
No, I think it should remain in the county for now.
Same here.
Thank you.
Okay. You had two. Were they both related to the same thing?
Yes, that's it.
Okay. I got you. The second one was the list of required information. Okay. Brad, what do you got for us tonight?
Nothing specific to the council there, but I do have a couple of contracts.
Okay. All right.
He's waiting all this while
Yeah.
for your signature.
Lana, anything for the council tonight?
Nothing, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Council comments. Kevin Ritter, would you like to start?
Yes, sir. I had a call from a gentleman who lives on High Street in the 8500 block. We've talked about this property many times. There is a home that is in blighted condition there that hasn't been, I guess, transferred owners, but still hasn't got enough speed to satisfy the person. So just some discussion. Can we send him something that says we're going to do and follow the items that we said we would do with that piece of parcel, Mike?
Yeah, certainly. I had a conversation with that gentleman this afternoon, and I did let him know that the property, and I think we've talked about before, it changed hands in the middle of a code enforcement procedure, which essentially meant we had to start over. And so we did start over in January or so, but then when we had the staff reductions because of the COVID minimum staffing, code enforcement was just one of those things that it just further delayed the process. We just didn't have a lot of people on hand to enact codes enforcement, but we did. I promised him that I would get him an email tomorrow that lays out the process from here on out, and it's mowing and then some other property maintenance stuff. And so I'll get that to him tomorrow. I know this is just taking a lot longer than it should have.
It started middle of summer.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
Mm-hmm.
it needs to be handled.
Appreciate that. He's got some pretty graphic pictures if you need them. Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. Danny, anything for the group tonight?
The only thing I have, Mayor, is I'd like to, special thanks to the crew out there on the, taking in all the brush the last 2 weeks and taking care of all of that. And, Doug Smith, and also to thank Mike, for continuing on that second week. And he took care of a lot of brush out there and, got a lot of stuff cleaned up. So I appreciate it. And that's all I had, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Lori, anything tonight?
No, I don't have anything, Mayor. Thank you.
Rob?
A couple things. Number one, Mike, the posting of the council meeting minutes, how long and how quick does that happen? I mean, I know we have to wait till the next council meeting to approve it, but like the April minutes weren't still posted.
Oh, are we behind on it?
Yeah, we're behind.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
I was hearing
we
a
can
little
get those
bit
caught up,
from
can't we,
people
Ryan?
asking kind of that it's hard to keep up with what you're doing when it's a month and a half, 2 months behind on being able to read the minutes.
Yeah, we do try to not post them until they're approved. So we're 2 weeks behind on, but we shouldn't be much more than 2 weeks
I thought
behind.
Whitney usually did
Yeah, because I looked yesterday or day before, and the April ones were still not up there.
Okay, we'll get those caught up. Yeah, sorry about that.
91st Street striping.
Yeah.
Looks like we took it from 2 lanes each direction down to 1. My only concern on that would be Starside builds up. And if that Starside traffic's backing up into the DeSoto entry or exit, because there's no ability for them to turn, is that going to be an issue?
The road in front of Starside was 1 lane. I mean,
the road, but it goes 2 lane right at the DeSoto,
right past
it,
high school,
and that's where if cars going to Starside end up piling up in the 1 lane around the DeSoto entrance.
Do they actually ever extend past up to the district driveway even?
That line for Starside gets really long sometimes.
But that far long? Clear to the district driveway?
It's come close.
I would think we would have got complaints about driveway blockage if.
Yeah, I don't know, but I know I've gone to in and out to meet with teachers or something around that time, and that line gets long sometimes. I think it's gone that far back. So that was my only. I mean, there were some other concerns, but it's like, yeah, no, that's fine, but that would be kind of that one where is that going to potentially cause a problem? Not cause a problem with the Starside line?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's only
a
few minutes a day, but
yeah.
So
well, again, I'd say it's the same problem at the district office.
Yeah, I mean, it would be as long as they don't.
But I think we could find out from the district whether it's ever been a problem at their driveway.
Yeah. So
I did have a conversation with Frank Harwood. He called me when he saw the lines being reconfigured with concerns actually more about turning out of the high school and heading east and then stacking up at the intersection there. And I think with the exception of, because right now you can see here, they've got 2 lanes you can actually turn left into. And
but now you're turning into a single lane.
Yeah, there's
road.
concern about him the stacking on this drive here.
Yeah, because now you're turning.
Not necessarily.
Now they can only have a single left turn lane.
Yeah. So a couple of things with that is that I don't know that having these 2 left turn. I don't know how much that's really utilized.
No, that was never a good idea.
Yeah, never been that way.
It was heavily used, but yeah.
And then the other one was if we have this turn lane, it of course doesn't show here, but we have a definite length to this turn lane now before it turns into a center center
So
left.
will they be able to use that center
Yeah, I mean,
lane
yes,
to be
they
a left
can.
turn lane
Yeah.
during those high times?
Yeah. So essentially, the left turn bay can come all the way
Is-
back to
Yeah.
here.
I mean,
And in the end, I just told Frank what the reasoning was, and that putting the bike lane in there. Traffic counts on the street don't warrant 2 lanes in each direction now or really in the future. So he was
if we don't
okay.
have school there in the fall, then God forbid.
yeah. All the
So-
2 lefts really did was push the problem from the high school to the intersection quicker.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It didn't solve anything. It just got more
Yeah.
people from the high school
Congested intersection.
to Lexington and 91st faster. And I don't know that that's a good thing. That is not a good thing. I mean, I think a metered release is better. And then the other thing is their 87th Street connection, plus the ability to go west on 91st. Both of those things are going to change traffic patterns substantially on folks leaving that facility.
And the roundabout too.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Be a whole lot.
Because then there will no longer be any weight on a left turn. That
Right.
traffic will free flow.
Free
Right.
flow.
There will be no weight.
Okay. That was just kind of the comments, thoughts. At least have a little discussion to where people can hear some of the.
Yeah.
The third item I've got is part of the reason I'm in my DeSoto shirt today is at 2:00 I was down at the sheriff's office conducting interviews.
Yeah.
So he was here earlier. Deputy Rob Huff got promoted to sergeant. So congratulations to him. But that means we also lose Deputy Huff, who is extremely high quality. We were lucky to get him. But at the same time, we knew we would probably not have him for the 6 years that we had Deputy Vickers. So at that point, the position came open. And like last time, I sat on the interview board for the deputies that were going to be applying to be the new DeSoto car. Or fill the DeSoto car. And we had 3 applicants. All of them would have been highly qualified. They were all good, but Deputy Wesley Peel was the deputy that got the DeSoto car. There were 4 of us that were on the board, myself and 3 others, and it was pretty much unanimous. So Deputy Peel's been with the Sheriff's Department since 2006. He's been a patrol officer since 2010, so he's got 10 years on the street. So we can pretty much expect and welcome him to be our new DeSoto deputy, I think starting fairly quick. So that was the only other item I had was update on that.
All right. Thank you. Kevin.
Just a couple of minor things. One's code enforcement one I want to thank Mike for responding to, and that was Arcadian Estates had put up sediment fence around their property about a year ago, and it was falling apart and in the ditch, and Mike got it taken care of. They got out there, got it repaired, so at least it looks decent now. It is still in the road right away, so mowing, I think, is going to be the next thing you're going to have to deal with there. So appreciate you taking care of that. I had a couple of complaints on it. The other one is every time we get even an incidental rain, I appreciate your responsiveness to the culvert situation and how quickly you were able to procure the pipe and get it installed. It was obviously a major life safety issue, and I appreciate how expeditiously you made that happen.
Well, yeah, on that, I will give a lot of credit to Ron Creason's street department and all of his guys, and the mayor. He was out there on more than one occasion, traipsing around in the mud with us. Once on a Saturday, to figure
He
out
provided his good engineering expertise to the
he did.
solution.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
I have one other question real quick. Jake's Fireworks, their whole signage started blowing in the wind. But part of the question I've got is not only was it blowing in the wind, but it wasn't supposed to be fabric originally in the plan, was it? It was more of a metal.
the
it was
plan-
a metal screen that was more durable than that.
Yeah.
So at that point, do they need to correct that and make it match what the site plan and that was, and use the proper material they said it would be?
I can't say for sure that the site plan was specific on metal or fabric. It did have architectural.
It designated a type of material for that.
Yeah,
if I remember correct.
We looked at that when it first went up, and I had the same opinion. This fabric stuff is kind of cheap. And
Even Mark with Hike Properties, I believe, commented that it was the wrong material.
Yeah,
so I would at least ask that we look into, does it match what the site plan was, and if so, not, then let's get it corrected.
Yeah, and we did that, and I can't say we concluded one way or another that it does or doesn't match. Certainly didn't meet my expectations, or I don't think the expectations of the Planning Commission. But with the thing torn to shreds now, before the building opens, I think we have another really good logical argument.
I was going to say it's been somewhat corrected,
a little better. Yeah.
It's not blowing in the wind like it was, but
is it still torn?
Zip ties or something?
I don't know, but
it's not folded over on
because
itself.
I was in the planning commission meetings during that time, and I believe it was a specified material because they talked about it being a metal screen of some kind. That
I share your opinion on that.
Have to listen to.
We will. We'll follow up on that.
Okay.
We'll follow up.
Okay.
That was it. Thank you.
So I would echo that. The guys, the street crew, Ron and the new fella,
Marcel.
Man, he got in it.
He did.
He didn't.
Yeah.
he came to work and he got put to work. They did a great job. And I'm glad to see. Boy, that pipe was full.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a couple things. We have some planning commission appointments. I would like to reappoint Roger Templin and Linda Lane to the planning commission for an additional term. So I would ask that the council would approve my appointment of those two reappointment of those two planning commissioners.
I'll make a motion. We go with the mayor's recommendations.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Hold on just a second, Mayor.
Sure.
I need to run. Wasn't prepared for. You snuck one in on me here. Come on, where are you? Okay. Murdoch,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Daniels,
yes.
Hanemichael.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion
Okay.
carried, Mayor.
Thank you. We also have one other board vacancy. We lost a park board member. Todd Tucker was a landscape architect that worked for FEMA, right?
Yeah.
And he is leaving our community, unfortunately, so that opens up a spot on our park board. It was recent enough that I had some really good applicants on the last go around, and I would like to appoint Jim Dosher. He was my second. He's an older gentleman, but he's really had been involved heavily with the pickleball group and a regular. I had a good conversation with Jim, and I would like to appoint him to that vacancy on the park board.
What's his last name, Mayor?
Doscher, Doscher.
I will make a motion to approve the recommendation of the mayor's recommendation of Jim Dosher to the Parks Board.
I'll second the motion.
I'll second that.
All right. I'm just going to do an all in favor. Say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
All opposed,
Aye.
same sign. All right. I don't think I have anything else tonight, so I would entertain a
I'll make a motion. We adjourn.
Second.
all in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you all.